Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Premier Wedge Direct Approvals webinar. My name is Shoshana Lede, and I will be your moderator for today. Once we start the actual presentation, Ms. Ann Brown will be your presenter. She will demonstrate how you can utilize Premier Wedge to process your direct approvals faster than ever. Now on to some webinar housekeeping stuff. The next few slides of this webinar is designed to give you guidelines on using GoToWebinar from an attendee's view. To the left is the GoToWebinar viewer to which you will see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can ask questions and select an audio mode. You can open and close your control panel with the red arrow on the left of your dashboard. You can choose your audio preference of telephone or mic and speakers. If you choose telephone, use the dial-in information listed on your GoToWebinar dashboard. Now, everyone will be muted during this call to avoid any feedback or background noise. However, keep in mind you can always ask your questions within the questions pane. Feel free to type your questions in the pane at any time throughout this presentation. I will be answering all of your questions periodically during our training and at the end. And now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to Mrs. Ann Brown, who will introduce you to Premier Wedge Direct Approvals.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shoshana. As she said, my name is Ann and I will be your presenter today. Welcome you all to your Premier Edge webinar. The purpose of this training is to show you how you can easily add, process, and notify direct approval students in Premier Edge. And today we're going to show you how you can easily do that. Before we begin, we'll discuss a few of our objectives today. The objectives that we will cover will be how to go into Premier Edge and add a direct approval. We'll also discuss how you can search for a direct approval in Premier Edge. We'll also look at DC matching, so direct certification matching in the system. We'll look at how you can generate grace period letters. And finally, we'll look at how you can go and generate household letters. Again, as Shoshana said, at any point during the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box at the bottom of your webinar panel. As well, if you have any issues as far as connectivity, if you cannot see what I am showing, or if you have questions about something, or if you have any audio difficulty, please let us know and we will be sure to adjust to assist you. Alrighty. So again, this is going to be an overview of direct approvals process, and for those of you who are here, we're going to discuss how you can go through and process those using Premier Edge. So I'm going to share my screen with you at this time. As you can see, I am logged into Premier Edge, and this is how Premier Edge looks when you first log into the system. Once you log in, you have, as always, our logo here to the left, and you have our Amigo button here to the center right. We always like to remind you about Amigo. Amigo is an exclusive tool, so should you have questions about any of the processes that we're demonstrating today, you can select Amigo and that will launch a help window. Now from Amigo, you have various options, but specifically for direct approvals, if you select the guides, cards, and manuals, as well as webinar area here, our library, and if you select student eligibility, you will see that you have a listing of resources. Specifically, there is a DC matching update guide that you can view, as well as other student eligibility manuals as well. So please take note of that if you have questions later on. Now again, the whole purpose of this is to help you manage your direct approvals. We're going to talk about how you can match your direct certification students, as well as send out those household and grace period letters. To begin, we'll start by first navigating to the student eligibility module. Once you select the student eligibility module, you'll be then brought to the student eligibility homepage. Now your student eligibility homepage will of course show you a a summary of eligibilities, and this will be based on your user role permission. Throughout any of your Primero Edge trainings, you'll hear user role permission, and that is just basically whatever your job, function, or role is at your specific district. If you have administrative permissions, there may be things that you will be able to see and perform. If you do not, you may not. Primarily, whomever is responsible for processing direct approvals at your site will be able to have access to what we are going to demonstrate to you today. To begin with the direct approvals, we'll first start by going to the administration category. So by selecting administration, you will then see you have your direct approvals, DC matching, grace period letters, and household letters functions available. So under every module in Primero Edge, you have a series of categories, and under every category, you can open and close to view the various functions in that category. By selecting direct approvals, you will be then brought to your direct approvals page. And this is an area where you can search for your direct approvals as well as add in a new direct approval. So to stay in line with our objectives today, we'll first begin by showing you how you can add in a direct approval. Now this is where you can go and upload a file that your state has given you for your direct certification and other types of state approvals here. So by selecting the New button here to the right, you'll be then brought to a screen where you can add in a new direct approval. To begin, you'll first select an approval type. So your approval type can be any of these from this particular drop-down. Okay, so these are some examples of various direct approval types. Once you select the appropriate approval type you would like to add in, you will then click Apply. Once you select Apply, you'll be then brought to a screen where you select the appropriate entry method. Now you will notice that your effective date has automatically defaulted to today's date, but you do have the ability to go through and see that here, that this will not change, as this will be the effective date of this particular file. Now this is not going to give you the option to enter in a new date, as this will be the date associated with this specific direct certification. Once you select the type, and okay, you'll select your entry method. You have selected here file import. You also have the option of manual entry, and we'll show you that in a moment. Now once you select file import, which is going to be the option that will allow you to actually upload and then import a file of direct certification students to Primero Edge, you will then need to select a file configuration from the drop-down. Now what this means is that based on the configuration, the number of columns, naming conventions in your state file, we will in Primero Edge create a file configuration to prepare Primero Edge to receive your files. So based on the specific approval type, so be it a direct cert file or if you have a DC SNAP file, each of those files may have different information. They may have different columns and different numbers. So we would look at an example of that file and then pair that with our system and allow you to easily be able to add that file to Primero Edge, as we will know ahead of time what information to expect. Okay. So once you select the appropriate approval type, you'll then select the file configuration. So if you have different approval types that you are going to be submitting from your state, you would then select the appropriate file configuration. So if you're uploading a DC Medicaid file, you would need to select the DC Medicaid file configuration. Okay, so just want to make sure that that's clear when you're moving forward. So once you select that, then you'll click the Select button, and you'll see that you have the option to now browse and upload your file into the system. Now these are the allowable extensions here that are listed. You have text, you have CSV, you have Excel, and so these are the allowable extensions for your file. Of course, this will be the file that you have saved to your desktop. So you'll search for that on your desktop. You'll select your file. Once you have it, you'll select the Upload button. By selecting Upload, you'll see here you have a information here in line that says your file is uploaded with the name there. The next step is to click Import. Once you select Import, you'll see a summary here that lets you know the number of students on that file. So I have 29 students on that file. And the final process to process and add that information is to click the process button here to the far right. So once I select process, I will get a green message letting me know that the file has been imported successfully and it is processing. And so at this time, the file is processing in the system. Now your process time will also depend on the number of students on the file as well. And so that will begin processing and being added to Primero Edge. As you can see, it's very easy to go through and add in a file. And again, you would just select the appropriate approval type as well as your file configuration. The next example of adding in a new approval will complete the same steps, but we'll select new here to the right. But instead of selecting the option for file, we'll go in and we'll select manual. Now you may, depending upon your district policy or how your district works, you may receive your other types of approvals in different methods. So let's say you don't have a file that you receive. Let's say you receive a listing via email or some other sort of communication. You may have a homeless liaison who emails you the information regarding those types of direct approvals. If you want to manually enter those in and build a list, you would of course select the appropriate approval type and select apply. Then we'll select the radio button for manual entry. Now this will tell the system that this is going to be a direct approval entered in on this day, and this will be the effective date for this direct approval for these grouping of students. Here you have the ability to now create or build your list of homeless students in the system. If you have an ID number for a student, you can type it in and add that student to your listing. If you do not have the information as far as the student's ID number, you can also select the three-dot button and look up that student's information. So by selecting the three-dot button here, our lookup button will bring us to our search screen. And so if I have my student's last name, I can type that in. And if I have that first initial, if I have a list, I can type that in and select search. Once you confirm this is the appropriate student you want to add to your listing, you can double click and add the student that way. And so you have the option to add in your students multiple ways and manually build your list. Okay. I'm going to search for one more student using my lookup button here. I'm going to type in, actually I'm going to use a first name. So I'm going to type in a first name only, and I can see I have my selections, and then I can select the appropriate student. Once you have all the students that you want for your listing, for your direct approvals, for your homeless roster here, you will then select process. Now you can see you do have a trash can or a recycle bin here to the right. You have the ability to delete any record here. So if you select delete, that will remove an item or a student from your listing. And if you need to add in more, you can add up to 25 students on a particular list, and you can continue to add more by clicking on this green plus here to the right. But once you've successfully added in all your students, you will click the process button. By clicking process, you'll see the system will do its magic. You have your green check marks that will appear, and now you will have a summary view that will appear, and you'll see two tabs. You'll see a summary tab and a students tab. These particular direct approvals have been immediately processed as you've entered those in, and we can see here we have a file number, we have our approval type, a file status, we have the change date for their status, which will be this date for today. You have your user, and this is the user that processed the direct approval, and then you'll have a summary, the number of records on file. We entered in 4 students' names, and you'll see here to the right you have a view of the eligibility results. So you'll see that you have 1 student who was changed from paid, 2 students who were changed from reduced, and you have 1 student that was changed from free to grace period, and you can see that here on your summary. If you have any supporting documentation that you want to add in reference to your manual entry, you can select this View and Add button, and that will allow you to, if you have any document that you want to scan or a file that you want to upload. Of course, you can select that Upload button, and these are the allowable extensions for that. So if you have an application, or if you have an email that you have taken a screenshot of, whatever the case may be, if you want to have some supporting documentation to include with this direct approval that you just processed, you can either scan or upload that information here. And you'll be able to see a number indicating the number of items in reference to the supporting documentation that you have. Our next tab here for our manual entry will give us a listing of all the students that we have added. As you can see, by selecting the Students tab, we can see all 4 of the students that are manually entered in my example. At the very top, you'll see that our options selected are exclude previously notified students and exclude previously free students. Now, by default, these 2 selections will be checked, and we will show you how these work in a moment. And so these will do just what they say. So any students who have been notified already would not be included in this list. So this is letting me know that these 4 students have not yet been notified. As well, you're seeing excluding previously any free students or previously free, so those will be excluded. You'll see here your matched students from your manual direct approval that you've entered in will be listed by ID number, last name, first name, site, grade, file number. This is the file number we just created, file date, match date, effective date, and match method. Now your last 3 columns are going to be notified on, email, and print. Now the notified on area will give you a date that the student has been notified, which means a notification has been generated in Primero Edge, indicating to the household the status of that student's eligibility for your district. The email column is available if the student has an email address associated with their student details in Primero Edge. You will have the option to check a box and send an email notification to the household. Now, if your system is configured for email notifications, that will be available. And then finally, you have your print column. Your print column will allow you to go through and actually select the students that you want to notify. Now you can select them individually, as I'm doing now. You can select them all by clicking at the very top here by selecting that checkbox. You also have the ability to view the notification prior to printing. Now I recommend this as you want to ensure your notification is configured properly. So simply by clicking on that paper icon, you have the ability to view your notification before you print it. So if you have a large number of notifications and you don't want to start a print job without first viewing and making sure your letters have been generated correctly. And so you can see here we have notification of a direct approval for free meals. You can see the parents of the student here. You have the student's address, and we have our letter. And so this letter is stating that our records indicate that the child listed below is eligible for free lunch, breakfast, and snacks due to his homeless status. Okay, and you can see the student's name here, and that is your letter. Now you can, from this view, print as well, as you can see at the very top, or also if the student had an email address, you do have the ability to email them as well. Again, I just viewed that letter. I did not print it. If I want to select these first 2, I can select those 2 and notify. I can also select the notify all button, and these are just options for you. And then you'll have the ability to select your various delivery options. Do you want to print all 4? You can select the letter format, whether it's household or individual. So household by default is selected, and that was in the example we saw earlier. Individual would be addressed to the actual student. Then you can see here you have your options for the letter address. Now this is very helpful and also pertinent as you're printing. You can decide to select the address that is in Primero Edge, and so that's going to be the address that was included on your student information file, or the address that was on the direct approval file. And this is going to be more applicable as far as when you're importing a file from your state and there's an address on there as well. Okay, and then you can sort your letters by zip code, site code, as well as last name. And so these are just different ways that you can go through when you select Notify All. But for our training purposes, I want to show you this feature. I'm just going to select these first 2 selections here, and I'm going to select the Notify button. And so by selecting that and selecting Notify, I will see my letters will generate. And these are actual notifications that I am telling the system I want to generate. So by doing that, you can see I have my preview, and you can see I have my 2 letters are here for my 2 students. Okay, and so I'm just going to say, in theory, I print those out for those students. And you'll see now I have that green message letting me know my letters have printed successfully. Now, if you notice, because I have the exclude previous notified student button checked here, I only have 2 records remaining. That means that those other 2 students, they have been removed from my list because I have notified them per the system. If I deselect this checkbox and then select apply, that will then show me those students that have been notified, and you will be able to see a date for them here, and you'll see that here. And this is how you can work and manage your list of notifications. And this is pretty standard throughout student eligibility as well as your direct approvals area. If a notification has been sent, you will see that status, or you'll have a status of notified, or you'll have a date in the notify column letting you know that. Okay, and so you would just continue to proceed, of course, to notify your additional students using the same method that I showed you before. Alrighty, and that is how you go through and you process a manual direct approval. If I want to go back to my direct approval list, if I select that hyperlink, that will bring me to my area here, my main screen that we started at. Now, the direct approval file that I imported with those 29 students is still processing. Now, this is the area where I can view those details. Okay, so we've gone through and we've uploaded a file that's still processing, and then we've manually processed an actual number of students for a homeless direct approval. Those will be immediately processed. But if you want to search for your direct approvals, you can do so from this view. You can search by academic year, you can search by approval, or you can search by student. Okay, and so by searching by each of these methods, you're able to view various information. Okay, so searching by approval will allow you to go through and view a listing of all your direct approvals that you have in the system. Okay, so our example here, I'm going to show you an interpretation of how you can search for your students and view them by student. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my PowerPoint here. And so this is an example of how you can go through and you can search for a direct approval by student. So you will first select your academic year, and then your search by option of approval, and then you must of course select a approval type. In my example, I've selected direct certification, then you'll select apply. Once you do that, you will see a listing of your students that will appear, and you'll see a file number there that will appear, and you'll be able to see that approval type, their status if processed. You'll see the update date when the update was taking place, the file date, the user who uploaded it, and the number of students on that direct approval file. And so if I select this arrow next to this particular file number, that will expose details on that record. Okay, and so if I want to see more of those details, I'll just zoom in that for you. So when I select that hyperlink, go here, for this particular file, I will be able to see those details for that direct approval file. So you'll be able to see the file number. They'll just expose or give you more information. And so here you can see the number of students on this file was 83. Okay, and you can see here, you'll see the number of matched SNAP students, non-SNAP students with 0. You'll be able to see the eligibility results as well. And so that's just a breakdown of how you can view all of your direct approvals by approval type. Okay, and then you can go in and select the different types, and you can just view the details of those. Now, if I go through and I select that, again, that hyperlink, and to view more details about this particular direct approval file, again, this is an interpretation of what happens when you open that arrow. But if we look at that file number 1036, if I select that hyperlink, that will bring me to this view where I can see my summary, as well as a match tab, as well as a potential match tab. Okay, so if I go back a screen, just so that you guys are clear, by clicking on this hyperlink, that will bring me to this view in Primero Edge, and this view will show me more details about the file. So you get that same summary that we saw when we opened that arrow, but you also have the ability to see the students that were matched, and then any additional potential matches from that file that can be made within Primero Edge. Okay, and so this is your summary tab. Your summary tab is the same information we saw when we opened that arrow. Your match tab is going to give you a listing of all the students who were matched when the file was added into the system. So you'll be able to see here when we select match, you'll see your options again. You have that same matched option to see exclude previously notified students as well as exclude previously free students. And then you can, once you pull up this, you can select apply. So you can deselect any of those options. So your matched students will appear by ID number, last name, first name, site, grade, file number. It's going to be the same file number, the file date, match date, effective date, and their match method is going to be system. So a system match in Primero Edge is a match that was performed as a result of your direct certification or your direct approval file being added to the system, and then the system was able to appropriately match that information from the file with the information that is in Primero Edge. Okay. And so you can go through and view those details. Now, if I want to look at a specific student, let's focus on Noella, our student here. We can click the arrow key and that will open up those details for me and you'll be able to see a summary. Further, if I want to see how the student was matched, I can click the view details area here. So let me zoom in on that. Okay, so if I select the arrow key here, that will open up and I can view details on that student, their home address, where they live, their date of birth, and their matching criteria. These are all system or automatic matches. But if I want to view the details for that, I will click this hyperlink. Now, this hyperlink is going to give me a view of what's called a scorecard. In Primero Edge, there is an algorithm that is used to help match students so that you can quickly be able to match your students' details with your file details. And this is an example of a scorecard that will generate to help you do that. And this scorecard will just explain to you how this was determined to be a system match. So if we look at this scorecard, we can see we have our student Noella, we have our matching criteria column, we have our student details here in green, and then you have your file details here in orange, okay? And so these are details that will allow you to see how that match was made. So what information was paired based on these two groupings of data. So in Primero Edge, your matching criteria is this column that includes your social security number, first name, date of birth. Each of these matching criteria are given a point value. If your file in Primero Edge matches, those points will then be added together to come up with a total, which will interpret the type of match that is, whether it's a system match. And as you can see here, we have social security number, we have first name, last name, date of birth, as well as county code. County code is included in that. And then once all of those numbers are added together, you have a total. If that value or that number is below or over a certain amount or under, it will determine the type of match it is in Primero Edge. And so that is how this is considered a system match. Okay, and so we'll just view that again, and you can see here you have those points there for those areas, and at the very bottom for this student we have a total of 86 points, and you'll see auto in parentheses. We'll see this again, or this will come up in another area in a moment when we go into DC matching, but know that that algorithm is very helpful in Primero Edge, and that's why it's important that you make sure that you have your student file details when you upload that file and has enough information and appropriate information so we can go in and match your student. So now that we've looked at our matched tab, our next tab is our potential matches tab. So when you click on that potential matches tab, we'll just go back a moment, which is this tab here. When I click that potential matches tab, that will bring me to this view. And this is where you can go in and manually match students. Our previous tab that we saw were students who were matched by the system. The system did that work for you. But your potential match tab allows you to go in and manually match your own students. So you have the ability here. By default, this page will appear and you'll have your probability of high as well as compare status checked for you. And if you select apply, if you have no students appear, that means that there are no potential matches for you. But if you do, this is an example of how your potential matches will appear on your screen. Okay, and so what the system will do, it will give you an interpretation and a comparison of the students in Primero Edge. You'll see the students' details in Primero Edge compared with the students' information on the certification file. As you can see here, we have our student, Adriana Adams is here, and then you have the ability to compare that information with what's on the certification file. Okay, and so if we click on the compare hyperlink, you can then be able to determine if this is an appropriate match. Okay, now again, by default, your probability of high and not review will be selected. You can select medium as well, and medium is in reference to the probability that was calculated based on the information that was compared. Okay, and so we do recommend that you go and review your high and medium probability matches. Now your compare status is going to have to do with how you manage your list. Not reviewed means that you have not reviewed it and you have not marked that possible potential match as reviewed. And so that helps you manage and work your list. And then you also have the ability to see more details on the certification file. And I'll show you how those compare and more hyperlinks show up in a moment. But if you see here again, for your Primero Edge student details, you have your student ID, last name, first name, date of birth, and that will be compared with the last name, first name, date of birth, and that probability that was calculated by the algorithm in the system. Okay, so remember, each of those columns have a point value, and the system will add that in together. So if we want to compare for our student, you'll click the compare hyperlink, and once you click compare, that will bring you to the same scorecard that we saw earlier, but this time this is giving you the user the opportunity to actually make the match. Our previous view in our match tab showed that the student was already matched. This is going to allow the user to actually make a match. Okay, so if I zoom in here on this particular student, if you select that hyperlink, this is going to show you again, you have your matching criteria, your file details, and your student details in Primero Edge. We have all of our highlighted areas will indicate the columns or details that were matched on both groupings of data. At the very bottom, you can see here that we have a total of 42 points that were generated as a result of this pairing. Now the user will have the ability to match the student, or they can simply mark it as reviewed. Reviewed means that this is not a potential match, but I want to mark it as reviewed and maybe address it later. Okay, and so that is how you can work your list. But the match button will immediately match those students, and that information will be matched in the system, and that student will be appropriately paired with those details from the direct approval file. Once you've made your match, the user will simply select close and then go to their next possible pairing of matches. Now your more button here to the far right in your certification details area is where you can see details about the case file. So you'll be able to see your case file number, you'll be able to see the DC type as well as the file date, and so that will give you more of that information. Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to pause really quickly to see if anyone has any questions about this portion of the overview as we've gone through and we've discussed how you add in direct approvals and then also how you view the details on a direct approval file. Shoshana, you have any questions for me?
All right. Hello. Thank you so much, Anne. Yes, we did have one question here, or just one request for you. Crystal, or Christelle, she has requested that you go over that potential match tab again. Crystal, I would like to ask you first, before she revisits that tab, is there anything specific under the potential match that you missed, or would you like her to go over the complete tab? Please go ahead and submit that your answer to that question within the questions panel, just so that we know exactly what you need for us to go over again. But outside of that, Anne, great job. There's no other questions that have come in so far.
Okay.
Okay, and Christelle has just replied. She says that she missed where it's located. So if you can just show her where that potential match is located again.
Okay. Absolutely, I can do that. So again, Crystal, when we're talking about potential matches. Now, this is in reference to a direct approval file that has been processed. Okay, so we're not actually going in and doing DC matching yet. You will see that same information when we move forward. Okay, so this is not where you're just going in and doing manual DC matching. This is an option that is available to you through your direct approval file processing. So in other words, I'll go back a screen. Okay. So again, we're talking about how you can go and view direct approvals. Okay. And so by selecting the file number here, you can go through, and then that will bring you to these three tabs where you'll see a summary of the students on the file, summary of the information. Your match tab will show you, based on the direct approval file that you've uploaded, what was matched. And then if you have any potential matches on the file, you can go through and view those as well. Okay, and so this is an interpretation of how a student was matched by the system automatically. So the system did the work for you in this interpretation. Our next option is the potential match tab, where you can go in and match based on your file. Okay, and so that's what how that looks. And so that is from here. By selecting this potential matches tab, you'll go in. High and not reviewed will be automatically selected for you, so you select apply. If you have any potential matches on your direct approval file in comparison to Primero Edge, you can then move forward and view those details and match them manually. Okay, did I answer your question?
All right, it looks like you did, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you, no problem. Alrighty, and so now that we've talked about that, I'm going to switch back to my system. As we've gone through and we've seen how you can search by approval. If you select the search for by student option, and that's here at the very top, now you can see you have more information. You have a wider range of criteria to enter in. So you can search for your direct approvals once they've been entered into Primero Edge by site code, by site. You can enter in students' details. You can also select a grade. You can search for a specific file for a specific date range. You can select for a effective date range or a match date range. As well, you can select the match method that you want to go through and look at. And as we said before, our system matches are those matches that were matched during your DC file import. Now, anytime, ladies and gentlemen, that you see a blue eye in the system, that indicates that that's some additional information for you. So if you hover over that, you will see we have a definition for each of our match methods. We have our system match, which already explained and demonstrated when we processed that file that we imported. The system will automatically make those matches for us because they have those really high numbers in terms of their matches when that algorithm is applied. Your sibling matches will include matches that are made by household, by address, by guardian, or manual matches, and I'll show you that in a moment. So we'll show you how you can extend benefits. Then you have your manual matches, which are those that can be found in your potential matches tab, and that's what I just showed you. And then finally, you can see any transfers, and that includes all matches performed in another at another SFA that have transferred to your district. Your final area of criteria are your file details, where you can enter in a case number and you can also select an approval type. Okay, so in theory, you have the ability here, when you initially select direct approvals, you can search by approval, which means that if I want to search for all of my direct approvals and I don't enter in a date range and select apply, I'm going to be able to see all of my direct approvals for this particular approval type. Okay, as you can see here, I have two that are files that are in progress, and so this is the one that I just entered in this morning here with us, and you can see I expand. This is going to give us those details, and so this is just a live interpretation of how you can search specifically by approval type. If I go in and I select student, student is going to give me more options. And so if I want to search for a specific file date, Okay, so if I select reset, and I'm going to enter in my file data. I am in my testing site, so I have a little truncated data here, and if I select apply, it's going to require that I enter in an approval type. So any information that's going to be needed for the system to pull, you would need to make sure you select the appropriate approval type, and then you select apply, and that would may or may not appear here. Okay, and so again, you will select your various approval types and select apply. And if I select homeless, we process those manual homeless students. As you can see here, now those students appear in my search, and so it's just a method for you to view the information, and you can search either by approval or by student. Okay. And so this will allow you to also, as we said before, notify your students from here as well. So you can view, you can search, you can add, and you can notify your direct approvals that you add in here. So all of your direct approvals that you add in through your file, as well as those that you manually add, you can view, search through them, and notify them from this area. Our next area that we will discuss is DC matching. Now, DC matching is the area where you have the ability to go through and you can extend benefits to siblings, as well as do your manual matching or match those potential students. And this is the same area that we saw above when we were in our direct approvals area. So you will see here that this is the same area of the same screen. So your potential matches, again, your high and your not review will be selected. If you select apply, if you have any potential matches that you need to match, you would see them here, and you would then proceed with the same view that we saw before, where you'll compare and be able to go through and match those students. So this is the exact same area here. Okay, and so I'm going to share my screen. So this is that exact same area where you compare and then you match or either marked as reviewed. Okay, but that is the same area that we saw when we were looking in our view for direct approvals. That same potential matches tab exists on your DC matching. Okay, so we're ahead of the game on that. And so that's how that works. Our next area that we can view now is our sibling match tab. So I'm here now working under DC matching, and my next tab that I'll show you is your DC, your sibling tab. Now your sibling tab allows you to match siblings by household, by address, by guardian, or you have the option to manually match students. Okay. You can select any of the 4 options here, these methods. It's up to you which one you select. It's not required that you use any one. That will be based on your preference. Okay. So by default, by household is selected. If I click apply, then you will see the possibility of any possible sibling matches appear in your listing. So you'll see your match student here. You'll have a hyperlink for an address, as well as the student that the system is saying could be a possible match. You will then select the hyperlink for the address. You'll have a column that you'll select here, and then you will process those matches. Okay, so you'll select the process matches button, and those matches will then be processed. It's a very simple process. You'll view the information. You'll see a overview of the address for the students, and then you'll process those matches, and you have the ability to immediately notify them from this screen as well. Okay. By address, you select by address. You'll see here there's a checkbox that says last name match required will be selected. You can deselect that option or not. As you know, you may have some siblings who don't have the same last name, but they are related. So you can select that or deselect that, and again, select apply. The same view, you'll see your match student, your potential student that you can match them to, or the student that you can extend to, and you will view the address. You'll select that. Once you have your selections, you will select the process button here and process those matches. By guardian, it's going to ask specifically for the exact last name and first name for guardians. I'm just going to click this here. You can see your last name exactly and first name is required. And so you have to have 2 students who have the exact guardian information in Primero Edge for that to show up. And again, if you don't have any, when you go in and you select apply, if no students appear, that means you don't have any of those matches in the system or possible matches. Your final area is, or your option or method is manual. If I select apply here, that will bring me to a view where I can manually extend benefits here. And so your manual option allows me to go through and manually create a match between siblings. Okay, and you can do that, and you would enter in your approved student's ID number. And so again, this is a student that you know for sure is approved for those meals. Okay, so that's a direct approval. You would automatically go in and approve that student. And so then you would add in that student's ID number, or if you don't know the student's ID number, you can search for them by clicking on your three-dot button, and that will bring up your search window. And then you would add in that student. And then you will add in the sibling that you want to match. And so you're manually creating the match. These other three methods is utilizing the system to match, okay? Or extend, excuse me. These other three methods are saying that the system is going to extend these benefits to siblings. This manual match is where you are doing the work and you're extending those benefits, and then you'll select process, and then you'll also have the ability again to notify from this tab as well. Okay. Our next tab is our matched tab. Your matched tab is going to give you a view of all of the students that you have in Primero Edge for the year. Okay, so by selecting matched, the system will give you an overview of all the students that have been matched for the school year. You can search by academic year, you can search by site, you can search by site code, and again you have that view and entering in details if you would like, as well as any of those areas that you saw when you were searching for your direct approvals by approval. Okay, and so you can see your students will be listed here. You can expand and view their details for each. You can even unmatch them. You can view their details again by clicking on the View Details button. And so you can view those details for your students. And you also have the ability to notify them from this area as well. So your Match tab allows you to notify from here as well. Now again, you do have the ability to notify from those other areas. When we're going in and processing your direct approvals, the system will help you manage that by quickly allowing you to match as you need to. But you also, if you need to generate another notification for whatever reason, you can do so from this area. Okay. And our final tab under DC Matching is our File Search tab. And so your File Search tab will allow you to go through and search within your actual file. Okay, so by selecting the File Search tab, you can see you can search within your certification file by social security number and date of birth. And so you would enter in those details for that student and search, and that will just give you the details for the file, and you'll have a comparison that you can view. You can search by name and date of birth. And so you can just use any of the options at the very top. And this is just if you need to, you get a phone call and you need to go through and there's specific information you're trying to search for, you just need to look within that file, you can do that. And then finally you can search by case number. Okay, so any of these examples of search by and examples, if you only have this amount of information and you're trying to find details, or you only have a case number, this will help you compare that and link that to Primero Edge student information as well as certification file information. Okay, and that is our DC matching area, our DC matching function. Before we move on to grace period letters and household letters, I'm going to check in with Shoshana one more again to see if we have any additional questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne. It looks like that information was clear and concise. We don't have any questions thus far, but that was some great information that Anne has provided us. Remember that if you do have any questions that come up, I am here, sitting here, fielding those questions for you. So even though she's about to move into grace period letters and then household letters, if you find that you have any questions about direct approvals or DC matching or any of the previous tabs that Anne has discussed with us, feel free to ask those questions within the questions panel. It's not too late to do so. I'll still be here watching those. Thank you, Anne, but no questions thus far.
Thank you, Shoshana. All righty. Our next area that we'll discuss is the grace period letters function. So by selecting grace period letters, you will then be brought to the window where you can generate those letters. Of course, you can search by, again, site code or site. And really quickly, if you select a site code, the site will automatically appear. Likewise, if you select a site, the site code will automatically generate for you. So either of those can be selected. And I recommend that if you go through and do these, that you'll have the option to view the letter before, but you want to make sure that your letters are generating in the appropriate way before you initiate a very large print job. As well, you can go through and select a specific grade. You can leave it to all, or if you want to only print letters for a certain grade group, you can select that here. Once you have your criteria for the letters, you will then select apply. Now you notice at the very top, by default, exclude students in CEP sites. If that's applicable to your district, that can be either selected or deselected. So again, if we come back here to grace period letters, you can select from the drop down either your site code or your specific site. Again, you can also select the appropriate grade as well. If you want to only send letters to a specific grade, you can do that here. Then you'll select apply. And so when you select apply, you'll see here that you have your listing of students that you want to generate your grace period letter to. And so here you have the ability to go through and also view that copy of that letter before it's printed out. Okay, and so if I select this little paper icon for my letter, I will be able to see a view of the letter before it's printed. And so these are all students who are in currently in Primero Edge under that particular eligibility. Now if you go here and generate your letter, you can see here in my view, I have my notice of expiration to the parents of, and you'll see the students in the household. And this is to inform you that your children eligibility for free and reduced meals will expire on a certain date. Okay, and I am in my training site, so I have a truncated date there. Now again, if you come here and you initiate a search for grace period letters, if you don't have any students appear, then that means that you don't have any students who are in that particular area. And so if your list comes up and you have no students left on grace period, that will be indicated by a blank listing. And that's just how you notify. And we've gone over notifications. You can select individually if you would like to notify, or you can select an entire list. Our last and final example of functions under administration for direct approvals is household letters. And when you need to send letters out to your parents of your student body, you can print letters by school, grade, even zip code utilizing the household letter function. So again, that household letter is going to have school meal pricing as well as information about your school. And also those questions that parents may have about completing the application as well as eligibility. Again, you select your site. Okay, I can select my site and my site code will appear. You can sort by any of these options: zip code, school, grading, school. You can include grace period students or not. And you can also include students with no current eligibility. Okay, once you have all of those criteria selected appropriately for you, apply will then generate your household letter listing for you. And again, you would select those accordingly, the same way we did before. So if we just wanted to select those three and notify selected, when I select notify selected, my letter will appear based on the selections that I've made. Okay, and so that letter will generate for you, and then you'll be able to go through, and if you want to send that to other students, you can. Okay, and my system's just taking a little bit to pull that up. That's okay, but you'll be able to also view here as well. And so if you click on your piece of paper, you do have the ability to view an interpretation, just like we did before in our other areas. All right, and so again, your grace period letters and your household letters, you can go and you can determine how you want to generate those, but know you have the ability to sort select your method in which you want your letters to appear and generate from the system, and then you can then view them before you print them, and then you can issue them to your students. Alrighty. Now that is the sum of our overview today. I thank you all very much for your time and attention. And so we will just give you a opportunity to see if you have any more questions for myself or Shoshana that we could possibly help you with. But again, today it was a pleasure to go over the features and functions of direct approvals. While we're sitting to see if we have any questions that can come through to Shoshana, today we have gone through and we have discussed several things. One of the first things that we discussed is how you can go through and how you can add a direct approval into Primero Edge. Okay, and you can go through and add in a direct approval very easily by going through and either adding that file in, or you can go through and you can manually add in a direct approval. Okay, so you do have that ability to do that. You can also search for a direct approval very simply and easily. You can search by approval or you can search by student. Okay, and so ideally, adding your direct approvals can happen two ways. Again, you can upload your file from the state, or you can manually add in your your home list students manually. And you can also notify them directly from those screens. We've talked about how you can go through and complete your DC matching by going in and matching your students. You have that potential match tab where those students who have not been matched, but they have that high probability as a result of that great algorithm in Primero Edge that will match the students for you. You can go in and match them or mark them as reviewed. We talked about how you can extend benefits using the sibling match function. We've showed you also how you can go through and use those 4 different methods, whichever one is most impactful for you. Then we've also looked at how you can view all of your students that have been matched for the entire school year via the Match tab. And then finally, we've looked at how you can look and view your file search tab as well. Our final 2 areas that we discussed was how you can generate your grace period as well as household letters easily and efficiently in Primero Edge. All right, so with that, I'm going to check in again with Shoshana to see if anyone has any more questions for me.
All right. Well, thanks again, Anne. Great and helpful information that's going to come in handy once all of us start to use the system. I want to thank you for that. It doesn't look like we have any questions that have come in additional to those questions that Christelle had at the beginning of the presentation. Keep in mind, you guys, if you're typing away, if you have any questions and you just need some time in order to ask your question within the questions pane, we're not going to hang up the line. Continue to type your question in. We'll answer those as we go. If you also feel the need to maybe raise your hand and you want to ask a question aloud, we will be more than glad to unmute your line where you can ask the question to the group as well. So just keep in mind we're here and ready to help you. I'm going to go ahead and mute my line, but we will remain on the line until the end of the training. Thank you again, Anne.
Alrighty. As Shoshana said, please let us know if you have questions. After our session, if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact our customer care department. So if you have questions about any of the overviews that you have seen this week, you can definitely contact us and we will assist you. Our customer care team is very helpful with troubleshooting and answering questions you might have. You can call them at 866-442-6030, or if you feel better shooting an email, you can send an email at customercare@primeroedge.com, and that information is on your screen right now. So please feel free to contact us. Sometimes you may have a question a little bit later on about something. If you're not clear, we are happy to help you. As Shoshana said, we do have a few more minutes to our session. We have actually another minute, and so we will continue to hold on the line. Those of you who do not have any more questions, feel free to exit the overview. Those of you who are done with us today, we would like to say thank you, Shoshana, on behalf of Shoshana and I. Primero Edge. I'd like to thank you for joining us for our overview today. It was a pleasure to visit with you about direct approvals as well as the details related to the student eligibility module. Thank you.